Rome, January 897 AD. A corpse is sitting on a throne. It's been in the ground for 9 months. It's dressed in full papal vestments. A crown sits on what's left of its head. And the man who put it there is screaming at it. You'll see the moment Stephen's rage finally breaks the trial apart, and the room descends into chaos. You'll find out that the corpse was formally convicted, had 2 fingers cut from its hand, and was thrown into the Tiber River like garbage. And you'll learn why some historians think this wasn't madness at all, but a calculated political move that nearly worked. This is the Cadaver Synod, and I promise you, mainstream history has been keeping this one from you. To understand how a sitting pope ends up shrieking at a 9-month-old corpse, you need to understand what the papacy had become by the late 9th century. Think of it like a family business, where the family is at war with itself. The Carolingian Empire, Charlemagne's empire, had fractured. His grandsons carved it up, fought over the pieces, and left a power vacuum across Western Europe that every bishop, duke, and warlord was scrambling to fill. Rome was no different. Worse, actually. The papacy in this era was essentially a prize, a throne that powerful Roman aristocratic families fought over with money, armies, and murder. Popes came and went fast. Some lasted months, some lasted weeks. Several were almost certainly assassinated. This period would later get the nickname the pornocracy, though historians prefer the term the rule of the harlots, which is somehow even more dramatic. It refers to the era when a handful of Roman noble families, particularly the Theophylact family, effectively controlled who became pope. That's the world Pope Formosus stepped into. Formosus was elected pope in 891. He was not a simple man. He had spent decades as a bishop, a papal legate, a man with serious political ambitions. He had already been stripped of his offices once, accused of scheming for personal power, before being rehabilitated and elevated to the papacy. Here's the part I keep coming back to. The central controversy of his papacy wasn't theological. It was about one question: who gets to be Holy Roman Emperor? After the Carolingian line fractured, multiple claimants were fighting over the imperial title. Formosus made a choice. He crowned Lambert of Spoleto's rival, a man named Arnulf of Carinthia, as Holy Roman Emperor in 896. To his supporters, this was a geopolitical masterstroke. To his enemies, especially Lambert's faction and their allies in Rome, it was an act of betrayal and illegitimacy. Formosus died in April 896. Natural causes, as far as anyone can tell. He never saw what was coming. Pope Stephen VI took office in 896. Lambert of Spoleto was back in power. And Stephen, whether driven by political pressure from Lambert or by genuine personal obsession, and historians genuinely disagree on this, decided that Formosus needed to answer for his crimes. The problem, obviously, was that Formosus was dead. Stephen's solution was not to let that stop him. He had the body exhumed, 9 months in the ground. He had it dressed in papal vestments, the full regalia of the office Formosus had held. He had it propped upright on a throne in the council chamber. And he convened a synod, a formal church trial. Now stop for a second and sit with that image. A room full of bishops and clergy, the living pope pacing, furious, and in the chair of the accused, a decomposing body dressed for the part it could no longer play. A deacon was appointed to stand beside the corpse and speak its defense. That detail, that one detail, is what I can't get past. Was he there to give the proceedings a veneer of legitimacy? Almost certainly, but imagine being that deacon. Imagine what you say. Imagine what's in the room with you. The charges against Formosus were largely procedural. He was accused of perjury, of having coveted the papacy unlawfully, and, crucially, of having violated canon law by crowning Arnulf of Carinthia as emperor, and by allegedly serving as bishop of 2 sees simultaneously. The corpse, through its assigned defender, pleaded. Stephen did the bulk of the talking. By contemporary accounts, he raged, he shouted at the body, he demanded answers from a man who had none to give. The defense failed. Of course it did. Pope Formosus, dead for the better part of a year, was found guilty on all charges. The sentence was carried out immediately. The vestments were torn from the body. The 3 fingers on Formosus's right hand, used for consecrations and blessings, the fingers that had crowned an emperor, were cut off. The body was dragged from the chamber. First, it was thrown into a common grave. Then, because apparently that wasn't final enough, it was dug up again and thrown into the Tiber River. There's a metaphor lurking in all of this that I keep returning to. The papacy in this era was a body being dressed and undressed by whoever held the throne. The institution itself, the office, the vestments, the authority, existed separately from the man inside it. And in 897, someone finally made that metaphor literal. The Cadaver Synod achieved what Stephen needed politically, at least on paper. All of Formosus's acts were declared invalid. The clerics he had ordained were stripped of their orders. The coronation of Arnulf, the entire political architecture Formosus had built, was retroactively nullified. Lambert of Spoleto was presumably pleased. But here's where the story turns. Rome wasn't. The citizens of Rome, the ordinary people who had watched this spectacle unfold, were horrified. Whether from genuine religious revulsion, or from political opposition to Stephen's backers, or simply from the visceral shock of what had been done, the reaction was fast and severe. There were riots. The evidence gets thin here. Our sources are limited and not always neutral. But the picture that emerges is of a city that had finally had enough. An earthquake struck Rome around this time. Some contemporaries read it as divine judgment. Stephen VI was seized. He was stripped of his papal vestments, the symmetry there is not lost on me, imprisoned and strangled. Dead within months of the synod he had convened. The story has a coda. A subsequent pope, Theodora or possibly Pope John IX, depending on the source, ordered the rehabilitation of Formosus. The records of the Cadaver Synod were destroyed. The deacon, who had defended the corpse, may have helped retrieve the body from the Tiber. It was reinterred at St. Peter's. The trial was declared null and void. And then, a few years later, another pope reversed that, condemned Formosus again, and the whole cycle threatened to restart. That's the pornocracy. That's what the papacy had become. Not a succession of holy men guiding the faithful, but a throne that men killed for, dressed bodies for, and strangled each other in prison to reach. Here's what I find genuinely unresolved about all of this. We don't know what Stephen VI actually believed. Was he a political instrument of Lambert of Spoleto, staging a show trial because the nobility demanded it? Was he a true believer, a man who genuinely thought the dead could and should face canonical judgment? Or was he something stranger, a man so consumed by institutional rage that he lost track of where legitimate grievance ended and something else began? The body propped on the throne gave no answer then. It gives no answer now. Subscribe. There are more files where this one came from.